webinar, you're going to go over messaging button concept, a functional way to set up messaging buttons, and how to use them. The messaging buttons are designed for use with sound and light in your office environment to help you communicate in your office. If you want to use the sound functionality, you will have to have speakers in all the computers that are going to be using the sound. Because this is a webinar, you won't be able to hear how it sounds. If you want to try it, most offices have the basic setup in place, and you can try and see how it sounds using the basic settings in OpenDental. And just so you know, OpenDental also has all the original sound files that comes with the program. Plus, we also have quite a few extras as well. If you need one, just call us up. There's also a link on our website to some of the sound files we have. If you do a search for messaging elements and select the setup messaging elements, you'll see a link to the zip file for the sounds that we have available. Plus, you can also record your own messages. A good USB mic is helpful for that. USB mic, headset with a mic, and you can record your own elements. You'd basically go to Setup, Manage, Messaging, and double-click on the item you want to create a sound for, and then click the Record button. Once it's recorded, you can import it back into the messaging element. Plus, if you make any custom sounds, you might want to put them in somewhere safe, like the OpenDent image folder, just in case a messaging element gets deleted. To begin with, let's talk about organization. To me, organization is the best way to set up your messaging buttons. I set mine up in Excel. It has all the different elements. It has the buttons that I wanted on the side with the colors associated with them that I chose. It also has, if you go to the Manage section, you'll see the To, From, Extra, and Message and Send section. I also updated that with the way I wanted to set it up as well. You can use the setup that's already in the OpenDental program. It is functional. It is designed to be an example, but it is fully functional. So I'm going to go over one setup scenario in this webinar. This will be different from the default setup, and it will do exactly what hopefully we intend. In this webinar, I'm going to create a button for each of the key persons in the office and some general buttons that don't have to be linked to anybody's name. You'll see that here in the button section. To use it, the person initializing the message either clicks on the general message button, which will light them up, or that person goes to the Manage module, clicks on the appropriate To, From, Extra, and Message to send that message. That person's name will light up. When they see their name, and if you have a sound associated with it, when they hear their name over the speakers, they would just go to the Manage module and see that message. You can also click the To section, From section, and add a text message down here at the bottom to send a custom message. The message will show up here in the message history, and then once you've sent it, whoever is going to acknowledge it would just select that and then click the Acknowledge button, or they can also clear it by clicking on the lighted button over here on the left side. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by talking about my spreadsheet I created. I just created the different buttons that I wanted with the different colors and names. And I also added the 2 extras and message that I'm going to add as well. Then we want to clear our existing messages. So to get to the messaging section, depending on the version you have, you'll either click Setup and Messaging, or you'll click Setup and Manage Messaging and Messaging buttons. So let's go ahead and clear some of these messages. You just go into Setup, Manage, Messaging, and you just double-click them and delete them. I've tried it a couple different ways. I've tried just reusing the elements that I wanted, And I've also tried just doing a fresh start, deleting everything and starting from scratch. You can do it either way, but I found that if you do it from scratch, you have less chance of making a mistake and having buttons doing things that you don't expect them to. If you start from scratch and just go all off of your layout, it seems to work better. The only exception might be the extras, because the extras in my example are the same as the defaults, so you could leave them just the way they are. And again, you just double-click and delete them to clear them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch databases real quick. I've actually got one database with the messages pretty much all set up. Because of time constraints, I don't want to set up the entire setup the way it is. If you notice, I have some of the buttons set up, and I have some of the messaging elements set up as well. So whenever you're setting up your messaging buttons, the first place you want to go is you want to go to Setup, and in this case, Manage and Messaging. You always want to set up your elements first. So if you notice, I have most of the users added, the extras are the same, and I have most of the messages set up. So to add a message, you simply click the Add button. In this case, I have everybody but Beth and Sally, so we're just going to go and add Beth. You want the type to be user. You put in the name. If you want a sound file, you would either import it, or you would launch your recorder, which is going to open up the recorder in Windows. You would record that message, you would close it, save it, and then you'd import it back into the OpenDental element. If you want the lights, the button lights to light up, you have to specify the light row right here. In this case, it's going to be row number 7, and I'm going off my example over here on my template. And the color is going to be a bright blue. And we're going to go ahead and add one more. We're going to add Sally. And just so you know, the type will always stay wherever you leave it. So if you leave it at user, the next time you click add, it's going to default to user. If you switch it to message, the next time you click add, it's going to default to the message section. Again, if you wanted to record a sound, you do that from right here, or if you already had a sound file, you'd import it. Sally's going to be on row 8, and she's going to be a bright yellow. Once you've added that, you can click OK. The extras, like I said, are going to be the same. And then the messages, the only one I'm missing is the very bottom one, ignore last message, so we click Add. We select message from right here. We type in what you want it to say. Again, if you want to record a message, you would do that. This is not. This one is not going to light up a row, and it's not going to have a color associated with it. So you want to set the light row to 0, and you want to set the color to white. And then if you have to organize these to get them to match, you just use your up and down arrow keys to make them match. Once you've added all your messaging elements for your template, you can click Close. And then you can set up the messaging buttons. So you go to Setup, Manage, and Messaging Buttons. I have all my buttons set up, except for a couple. So I'm going to double click on number 7. I'm going to put the text I want on there. I'm going to select Beth as the user. There's going to be no extras or messages selected. The sync icon is going to be the little square in the icon down at your taskbar, which is the OpenDental program icon. The sync icon, if this is clicked, some versions of Windows, it will actually light up the color on that little icon to match the color you have selected right here. So in this case, I'm going to do number 8. And unfortunately, you won't be able to see it on this example because all my icons are hidden. And it also depends, like I said, on the version of Windows, whether that will work or not. The other one I want to set up is Sally. Sync item is going to be 9 on this one, and user is going to be Sally. Now, basically, I have all my buttons set up. And let's talk about the computer section over here for a moment. You can have different buttons on different computers have a different description. There is a drawback to doing that. If you have button number 2 set for Dr. Brian on all the other computers except one, then if you ever click that Dr. Brian button, the person on that one computer with something different is not going to see that it's for Dr. Brian. That person is going to see whatever that is listed at on their computer. Also, if you have a light associated with button 1, that button is going to light up whether it's assigned to a button or not on every single computer. So it doesn't matter what the message is. If you have a light that lights up on row 1, it's going to light up for everybody. My advice is just set it up for all computers and set up each element to be the same. You also do have a little bit of a space constraint as well. Depending on the size of your monitor, you may or may not have all the buttons visible. If you notice, there's actually 20 buttons available, but depending on the size of your monitor, you may or may not see all of those buttons. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Now that we've set up the buttons and set up the messaging, you should see everything listed over here, and you see all the elements in the messaging section set up. So now we're going to do a couple tests just to make sure it works the way it's supposed to. And again, you may or may not be able to hear the sound on some of these. I'm going to try it just to see. If you hear it, great. If you don't, I'm sorry. We're going to do a couple tests. I don't have sounds associated with any of the employees or providers. The only ones you might hear are the extras and some of the messages. So let's do a test. We're going to do, we're just going to click on Dr. Brian, and we're going to select hold on just a second. So if you add messaging elements and they don't automatically refresh, then if you click your Manage button, it should refresh with what you've added. So let's try this again. We're going to click Dr. Brian, and we're going to select Amy right here, and we're going to say Dr. Brian's spouse is on line 1. As soon as you click line 1, it's going to populate that message history, and it should light up Dr. Brian's message or light. Sometimes it's going to take a second or two, but then it should pop up. And it should light up Dr. Brian's light. So in this situation, Dr. Brian would either hear his name or he would hear the message. He would look and see his name is lit up. He would go to the Open Dental program, click on Manage, and he would see what his message is. As soon as he wants to acknowledge it, he'll either click on it here and click Acknowledge, or he can simply click his button and it's going to clear it from the message history. Let's do another test. We're going to do Dr. Sarah, we're going to do Beth, and we're going to say 2 op 1. And again, it should light up Dr. Sarah's button, and it should add the message to the message history. And again, you can click on the button, or you can simply select the message and click the Acknowledge button to clear it. That works with the buttons up here at the top. The buttons down here at the bottom, phone assist, patient ready, and emergency, those are just basic buttons that you would just click. And you can just click on them and light them up. It may put a sound through the speakers if you have it set up. And it will show in the message history as well. These are basically multi-purpose buttons that I have set up. You would do patient ready if there's somebody at the front ready to go back. And I just added emergency just in case.
Patient ready.
Again, you can select multiple messages if needed and click acknowledge to clear them. You do want to clear your messages. You don't want to have a whole list of them. You want to clear them as soon as possible after they've been sent. That will keep this list smaller. You can also click include acknowledge to all the old messages as well. And you can also go back a set number of days to see history. You can also use the text message section down here as well. So if I was to go send a note to Tina from Sally, and I wanted to add something special, you would just type it in. As soon as you click Send Text, it's going to light up Tina's light, and it's going to add that message over here to the message history. When Tina saw her name, she would just go to the Manage module, and she would see what her message is. So you can use either the messaging section up here. You can click To, From, and add a text message down there and send it. And again, the message and send will automatically send that message. If you add a text message, you have to click the Send Text button to get that to light up. A couple notes, and we're going to clear this real quick. If a message is linked to a button, a good example is the emergency one. You'll see that light will light up, and it will be listed right here. If you select an element in the To or From section or Extra section, and then click on one of these messaging options, the message option will override the To and the From and the Extra. So if you have a light associated with To or From or Extra, and if you have a light associated with one of the message elements, the message element will override the To and the From. So before, Dr. Brian was lighting up his button. If I click Dr. Brian, emergency, you'll see that just the emergency light will light up. So basically, the message element will override the To and the From and the Extra. Just so you know, there is, you can have multiple buttons light up at the same time, but just be aware that that is very difficult to set up, and it may or may not work the way you expect it to. Best suggestion, set up one button, one light. Also, if you have set up in message, manage and messaging, if you have a light row set up for here and something different set up in managing buttons, if you have a different button set up for that same message, it will not work as expected. The button has to match what's in the messaging section. So if you make any changes in one, either messaging buttons or messaging, you have to make sure that change is set up in the other as well. So that's the basics of the messaging buttons webinar. I'm going to go ahead and open it up now for questions.